So there's a lot of questions by some people. It looks like there's a lot of confusion, and like everything else, when you look in Torah, there's no confusion. Everything is clear. And I think the confusion comes from lack of knowledge or misinformation. So what I put down on the paper here is over the years, we had classes where students raised questions about this subject, and I gave the answers. And this is a collection of those questions, not all of them. There's probably another dozen of them, if not more, but at least some of them, some of the most important ones, to explain what's the way we should be perceiving and approaching this day of Gimmel Tammuz. So Gimmel Tammuz is going to be in a week from this Thursday, but already Hasidim all over the world have been preparing. Of course, this year is very strange, like it is very strange with so many other things. Normally, there are tens of thousands of people that come in from all over the world to spend Gimmel Tammuz in the Rebbe's place. But this year, Crown Heights community is begging everybody not to come because of the situation with the health. That thank God, here in Crown Heights, there's sort of an immunity. And if other people come, especially thousands of people from different communities, it'll put everybody at risk here and those who come. But nevertheless, we're talking now about what is the content and this day and how should we approach it. So the general idea that is a day of passing of a tzaddik, and really every person, that there are certain customs, certain laws of how we're supposed to approach it. That is something which is basic Shulchan Aruch, basic halacha. Nevertheless, when it comes to a tzaddik, there's more that goes on in terms of the way we approach it. And again, there's something common in all Torah communities that everybody does, and everybody follows these customs. Nevertheless, Chabad always likes to make a commotion. So when it comes to Gimmel Tammuz and Chabad, it's different. And there's a lot of different issues that come up. Like I said, people don't understand it. So let's go into it. Of course, one of the main issues are the language that people in Chabad keep using. The Rebbe is alive, and the Rebbe is here, and people don't understand this language. What does it mean? What are you saying? No one talks like that. What does it mean? Is it just words? Is there more to it? Is it just something emotional, like we can't separate and disconnect? So we keep saying that he's here and he's alive, or this is based on Torah? What is the basis? What is the source? So of course the sources, which we'll soon go into it and go the details, but just starting with this, the sources are the famous words that are found in Rashi and Chumash, as we'll soon see. And that which is written in Rashi, the source is the Gemara, where the Gemara says 4 words: Yaakov Avinu lo mes. Yaakov, our father, did not die. What does that mean? Is it figurative? Is it literal? Why only Yaakov? So let me explain that in general. When we talk about this concept, there are 3 levels. One is the way it applies to every person. The second level is the way it applies to all tzaddikim, not every person, but only to tzaddikim. And the third level is that even amongst tzaddikim, it applies to selected tzaddikim, not to all tzaddikim. First of all, what does it mean it applies to every person? That means that when, God forbid, a person passes away, what's happening is that the neshama, the soul, separates itself from the body. The body decomposes. but the soul continues to live. In fact, the soul was alive and well before the person was born. When a person is born, the physical body of the baby is a new existing entity. It did not exist before. It existed for months, for 9 months in the womb of the mother. Then the baby is born, but before these 9 months, it was non-existent. The neshama is different. The neshama always existed. The neshama was created by Hashem in the beginning of creation. And the neshama waits sometimes for thousands of years until the time comes and Hashem says, now it's your time to descend to earth, and this neshama will be invested in this person's body. And the person lives for 120 years, and then the neshama leaves the body and goes back to Gan Eden, to the spiritual realm, and continues to live. So the process, which is the opposite of life, means that the neshama separates itself from the body, but the neshama continues to live. And this is something that is basic Jewish belief, and it applies to every Yid, because every Yid has a neshama, and the neshama is chelik alakami mal, it's part of Hashem, and therefore the neshama is eternal, it lives. There's a letter from the Rebbe. I know the letter in Hebrew. I did once see it in English. I was trying to find it for this class, but I just couldn't find where the letter is. But it's a very powerful letter. The Rebbe writes a letter to a woman who unfortunately lost her husband. And it looks like it was, from the letter, it appears that it was an attack, maybe in Israel, from a terrorist, Arab. And the Rebbe writes to her that how she should not let herself fall apart. She should be strong. She should be strong for herself, strong for her children. And then the Rebbe says she should be strong for her husband. And the Rebbe says the following, that the relationship between two people, it's not the physical. It's mainly beyond the physical, the personality. There are two people that they connect. And it's the neshama, the personality, the mind, the thought, the emotion, the feelings. That's really the connection between two people. But this connection manifests through the body, which means, how do I know what that person is thinking when they speak to me? How do I know what that person is feeling from the things that they say, from the things that they do? So the body only reveals to us what's really going on in the personality of that person. But it's the deeper part of the person, that neshama, personality that I'm connecting to. And the Rebbe says this connection between the two neshamas cannot be severed, can be disconnected. That's there. A bullet or a hand grenade, God forbid, or any other physical thing cannot take that away. All that can happen is that you don't see how this manifests. You don't get that feedback, what the person is feeling. Are they feeling pleasure? Are they feeling the opposite? But it still continues to go on. And he concludes to this woman that her husband is surely looking at her, at the family, and there's nothing more that he wants than that they should be strong, they should go on with their life, and they should build their life, and therefore she should make every effort to live that way. So this is something that applies to every single person, that the neshama continues to live. That's number one. Number two is a famous Gemara. This is in Brachas, Daf Chai. Interesting, it's page Chai. The 18th page, it's on the first side. If you do have a Gemara on the screen, then it's all the way at the bottom of that page. And the Gemara says, Tzadikim, even after they're passing, are called Chai. They're alive. And the question is, what does that mean? Okay, let's go to the bottom of the page. Pretty much like 2-3 lines before the end. Now this is 18b, Rachel Chana. Sorry, it's 18a. Oh, there you are, right there. Oops, go up a little bit. Okay. I just saw it. I don't know, maybe you have to move down. No, it has to be 18a. So there it is. Okay. It says that tzaddikim are called chayim. Could you bring it down one more line? One line. Right. Tzaddikim b'misasam. Tzaddikim, after they're passing, are called chayim. They're alive. You can read in the Hebrew English translation. And the Gemara brings a pasuk that indicates and shows us that tzaddikim, even after they're passing, are considered alive. So the question is, what does that mean? If we're talking about the fact that the neshama is alive, so it's not just only tzaddikim, every single person has a neshama, and every single person's neshama continues to live. So why do we say tzaddikim are considered alive? It should say every yid who has a neshama, even after his passing, is considered alive. So clearly there's something unique about tzaddikim, that they're considered alive, and it's something amazing, something I wouldn't have known if not for the Torah telling us something, such a new idea. What is it that's so different? So clearly, we're not talking just about the neshama. But when we say that tzaddikim are considered alive, that means even after they're passing, there's still a connection between the neshama and the guf. And there's some sort of a connection to the extent that we can refer to them as living people. That's what the Gemara is saying. Because if the Gemara is talking about the body is buried. If we're talking about the soul is alive for everybody. So obviously we're talking about the life the way we understand it, which is soul connected to the body. Tzaddikim, even after they're passing, not only the soul continues to live, but that life somehow is even connected to the body. And we'll soon see, so practically, what does that mean? But this is clear that the Gemara says tzaddikim are unique, they're different than everybody else, and that even after they're passing, they're considered chayim. Then comes the Gemara about Yaakov Avinu, and we'll soon see it's not only Yaakov, but also other selected tzaddikim. And what does the Gemara say? So let's first look in Rashi, because Rashi is a source that's accessible to everyone. It's in the Chumash. So this is Parshas Vayechi, and we're looking right at the page now. Thank you, Rachel Chana, where it says, this is describing last moments of Yaakov's life. Pasuk Lamed Gimmel 33. Yaakov concluded speaking to his children. He gathered his feet to the bed. He expired and was gathered to his people. Look in Rashi on that pasuk. He expired and was gathered. So Rashi says, but death is not mentioned concerning Yaakov, which led our sages to say, our father Yaakov did not die. So this is more than what it says about tzaddikim in general, because this is something unique about Yaakov. Again, if this is something which applies to all tzaddikim, so what's unique here about Yaakov? And of course, the language is also a much stronger language. That said, they're considered alive, they're called chayim, but Yaakov did not die. Now, where does this come from? The source for this is Gemara. So if you could look at the Gemara, which is Tainus, that's the tractate, and it's page 5b. I think here it's more or less in the middle of the page. Let's scroll and see if we can get there. Keep going. Keep going. More. A little bit more. Here we are. Rabbi Yitzchak was sitting at a meal and they were eating together. Rabbi Nachman said to Rabbi Yitzchak, say something, basically say Dvar Torah. So Rabbi Yochanan answered him, you're not supposed to be speaking in the middle of a meal, because there's a danger that the kana, which is the pipe that a person breathes with, might open up before the esophagus, and the food would go into the wrong place, and the person could, God forbid, choke. So therefore, you're not allowed to speak while you're eating. Okay, let's continue. Scroll a little bit further. After the meal was over, he said to him, okay, now he's going to say Dvar Torah. Rabbi Yochanan said, Yaakov Avinu lo mes, he never died. So the Gemara asks, if he never died, then why does it say in the Torah that they eulogized him? Why does it say in the Torah that they embalmed him? And why does it say in the Torah that they buried him if he never died? And the answer was, I know what it says in the Torah, in the Chumash. There's a pasuk where it says, do not be afraid, Yaakov, because I will take you out of salvation, I take you out of captivity from the far distant place. And the pasuk says, you, Yaakov, and your children. And being that the Torah compares Yaakov to his children, just like the children in the time of Geula will be alive, so it means that Yaakov is also considered alive. This is one of the 13. It's included in the different ways of interpreting the written Torah. So basically he's saying Yaakov is alive because I have a source for it in the Chumash. What about the question that it says in the Chumash that they eulogized him and they buried him and they embalmed him? So Rashi says, I don't think you have Rashi in this Gemara here, but Rashi says that, but being that we have proved that Yaakov is still alive, so we must conclude that it means it appeared to them that Yaakov passed away, but in essence, he was still alive. Now, these are the three sources, which is not three sources, the three stages that I'm talking about. Number one is that every Jew, the neshama, is considered alive. Number two, that by tzaddikim, it says they're more than others to the extent that they could be considered alive, not because of the neshama, but apparently the neshama and the body are still connected. And the third thing is that Yaakov Avinu is an exception, and he never died, even though it says in the Torah that he was buried and eulogized and everything else. So the first thing is, the first question on the list is, okay, but why does only Chabad make such an emphasis on Yaakov lo mes? This is in Gemara, it's Rashi and Chumash, everybody knows this, and yet this commotion and this statement that Yaakov didn't die and therefore this tzaddik is still alive, we don't find that in other circles they make such a big commotion about this like in Chabad. Why are we constantly quoting this Gemara and keep referring to the Rebbe and making such a big commotion with this statement? So the answer is that the Rebbe himself, this is the way the Rebbe spoke after the passing of the previous Rebbe. He continuously reiterated these words that the Rebbe is alive. And if anyone wants to look this up and see this inside, you can find this primarily in the first year after the passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the year 1950 till 1951. There's a book that was published by Sichos in English. It's called Proceeding Together. And over there, they have all the Sichos, all the talks that the Rebbe gave that first year. And you can see, if we have more time, I actually will be able to show you the sources. But if you look there, you'll see that almost every other week, the Rebbe spoke about this subject one way or another. And the Rebbe compared it to three tzaddikim. One is Yaakov, where it says Yaakov lo mes. The other is Moshe, which we'll soon see in one of the sources. The Gemara says Moshe also didn't die. And the third source is where the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rebbe, also didn't die. and we'll soon see those sources. So for us as Hasidim, we follow the Rebbe's path. And if that's the way the Rebbe spoke about his Rebbe, then that's the way we speak about our Rebbe. In fact, there's a quote from the Rebbe. The Rebbe mentioned this quote maybe hundreds of times. I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of times. And that is, Chayev Adam Loimar B'Lashon Rabbi. When a person speaks, they should speak the same language as their Rebbe. And the source for this is in Gemara. In fact, where does the Gemara say this? There's a statement in Gemara by Hillel Hazakan, the famous sage Hillel, and he made a statement about water that disqualifies a mikveh. And he says like this, these are his words. Really, the words that I'm saying now are very precise, so if you can pay attention. He said, Mole hin mayim shu'uvim, personalness hamikveh. A full amount of hin is a measurement of water that's not mikveh water, regular water. If you pour that into a mikveh that's not complete yet, then the mikveh becomes disqualified. In other words, once the mikveh has 40 saw, then you could put water in, it's not a problem. But if it doesn't have the 40 saw yet, and I put in this measurement of regular water, then that mikveh becomes disqualified. And the word that it uses, molei hin, means a full measurement, which is hin. So the Rambam explains, why did he say the word molei? He should have said just hin mayim shuvim. A measurement of hin, of water, disqualifies the mikveh. Why does he add the word molei and says something really remarkable? Hillel Zaken, who was the greatest sage of his times, he was the Nasi, and all the future yeshivas were based on his teachings and Shammai's teaching. Who was his Rebbe? His Rebbe was Shmaya and Naftalion. These two people, Shmaya and Naftalion, were descendants of Gerim, of converts. And because of where they came from, they couldn't pronounce the hey. When they would want to pronounce the hey sound, it came out as an aleph. So imagine if they would say these words, hin mayim she'uvim, the measurement of this kind of water, this measurement of water, passes the mikveh. But if the hey sounds like an aleph, the statement would sound like ein mayim she'uvim persons on mikveh. Mayim she'uvim do not disqualify the mikveh, which is the opposite of the halacha. So therefore they added a word, molei. So we know clearly that they're saying the word hin, not the word ein. And the Rebbe says the following. What does the Rambam write? That because their Rebbe spoke that way, and he said the word molei, even though it was because of some sort of a speech defect that came from the fact that they were descendants of certain non-Jewish group or tribe, but because that's the way my Rebbe spoke, so I'm saying, using the same words, and saying, molei hin mayim shuvim peislos hamikveh. So therefore the Rebbe concludes, if my Rebbe speaks in a certain way, because he's a descendant of converts, and they couldn't pronounce a word properly, nevertheless, I should follow and repeat it the way they said it. How much more so when the reason for something the Rebbe says is because there's a deep study and understanding and insight that I should surely continue and speak in that language. So for us, the Rebbe repeatedly said that the Rebbe is alive, Yaakov Lomes, therefore that's why we speak in the same way as well. So we read what it says in the Gemara, but the question people have is, when it says Yaakov didn't die, does that mean physically, literally? I would think it means figuratively, that he continues to live, his teachings continue to inspire us, he is the father of all the Jewish people, and in that way he continues to live through his children, but it doesn't mean literally. But if you paid attention to the Rashi that I mentioned before, Rashi says that being that Yaakov didn't die, so the fact that they buried him and did whatever they did was because to them it appeared that he died. These are Rashi's words. It appeared. But in reality, he was actually alive. In fact, there are sources that actually say that. I'm talking about Torah sources that say that when it says Yaakov didn't die, it means figuratively, not literally. But there are sources, and Rashi is one of them, that say no, it means he did not die literally. And one of the proofs for that is, if it meant figurative, then why did the Gemara ask a question? Why did they bury him if he didn't die? What kind of question is that? When we say he didn't die, it means figuratively, but literally he did. So therefore they had to bury him. And that's why they eulogized him. And that's why they embalmed him. Being that the Gemara asked that question, that itself is an indication that the Gemara understood that when we say these words, Yaakov didn't die, it means physically and literally he continued to live. And therefore, we don't understand why was he buried. So then the question is, this is number 5 on the sheet. Those that say that it means physically, does that mean that the burial of Yaakov is not real? It was only a figment of our imagination? That can be. It's in the Chumash. Yaakov's burial place is Ma'aras HaMachpelah, something which is accepted in Torah, so it's real. And yet we say he still continued to live. So why was there a burial? So obviously, it means that the two things are not a contradiction. We'll soon see how, but I just want to show you another one of the sources, and that's in Gemara Sota, page 13b. This is all the way at the bottom of the page of 13b, where the Gemara says, in reference to Moshe Rabbeinu, that being that it says in the Chumash, Vayomas Sham Moshe, uses the word Sham. Is this the bottom of the page? So let's go back 1-2 lines or something. Here we are. That being that it says Vayomas Sham Moshe, Moshe died there. And it says that he was there with Hashem, which was in the 40 days and 40 nights he went up to the mountain. It also says Sham. So just like over there, Moshe didn't die. He was on the mountain. He was in Shemayim. And he was standing there and serving before Hashem. So when it says here, by Yom HaShem Moshe, it also means he didn't die, but he is standing and serving for Hashem, and he's doing everything he can for us, for his sheep, for his nation. So this is another source that Moshe didn't die. The third example is the Gemara Ksuvas. Here again we see, when it says it didn't die, that it means literally. So this is Gemara Ksuvas, page 103a. I think this is more on towards the top of the page. But let's see, this is the top of the page. Let's start scrolling, if I can see where we are. This is a story in Gemara about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, he was the Nasi, he was the leader of his times. He's the one who wrote the Mishnah. One of the greatest tzaddikim that ever lived. And the Gemara says that when he passed away, before he passed away, everybody was praying for him, that he should not die. And then the Gemara describes what happened when it did happen. It describes what he said to his children. Is this the end of the page? No, it's got to be further. Here, a little bit back. Tana Rabbana. the sages taught. At the time of the passing of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he said, I need my sons. He wants to speak to his sons. His sons entered his room, and he said to them, as a last will and testament, be careful with honoring your mother. And then he said, my lamp should be lit in its usual place. My table should be set in its usual place. And the bed should be arranged in its usual place. Okay, let's scroll a little bit. So the first part that he said, remember to honor your mother, we understand that here the father was passing away. So he cautioned them that no way should there be anything compromised in the honor that they give to their mother. On the contrary. But why did he tell them? Why was it so important? Imagine, it's moments before this passing, this great tzaddik. There's so much to think about, so much to be concerned about, so much to tell your children about. And what did he tell them in that last moment? Make sure the lamp is in its place, the bed is in its place, and the table's in its place. So the Gemara asks, why was that so important? So let's scroll a little bit further. Here. Go back a little bit, 2 lines. Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi commanded his sons, my lamp should be lit in its usual place, my table should be set in its usual place, the bed should be arranged in its usual place. And the Gemara asks, what is the reason he made these requests? The Gemara explains every Shabbos night, Friday night, even if there's passing, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi would come to his house, just like he did during his lifetime, and he would sit by the table, and therefore he wished for everything to be set up as usual. What happened? The Gemara relates, next paragraph, the following incident. We'll scroll a little bit. It happened on a certain Shabbos that a neighbor came by and called and knocked at the door. The maidservant of Rebbe shouted to her, be quiet, Rabbi Yehuda is sitting here. She forgot herself. Nobody knew that he would come to visit the family every Friday night. But she forgot herself and said, Shah, Rebbe is sitting here. When he heard his maidservant reveal his presence to the neighbor, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said he's not coming back anymore. And the reason is because there were other tzaddikim that passed away. They didn't come back to their families. And now that people know that he did come back, it'll make them think maybe in a way that's not so respectful, but others, how come the others don't come back? They're not as good. Because he didn't want that to happen, he stopped coming. But it appears from the Gemara that he came for many years. There are commentaries which are not here, but if you look in the Gemara itself, if you look in the Art Scroll Gemara, there are commentators that say that not only that he came back to his family Friday night, but and by the way, he didn't come back in some scary looking way in shrouds. He came back wearing his Shabbos clothes, just like he looked during his lifetime. And when he came back, he made Kiddush. And with the Kiddush, he was Mitzi the family, which in itself is an incredible thing because according to halacha, a person that passes away is no longer obligated in mitzvahs. And if he's not obligated to the mitzvah, then he can be mitzi someone else. Just like a katan, a minor who's not bar mitzvah, can't make kiddush for the family. And the reason is because he himself is not obligated, so he can't be mitzi the family. When a person who passes away is pater from mitzvahs, it's based on a pasuk actually. It says, La meishim chavshi, which means that those that pass away are free. And the Gemara says, what does free mean? Free from mitzvahs. He's not obligated to observe mitzvahs. If he's not obligated, then how could he be mitzi others? So the Mefarshim say, this principle that someone who passes away is not obligated to do mitzvahs is only for ordinary people. But tzaddikim, even after their passing, are considered alive, and therefore mitzvahs can apply to him even after his passing. So we see from here that when it says tzaddikim are alive, it can actually manifest itself in a very physical way. He came to the house, to the family. So what does it mean? Did he pass away or did he not pass away?
Rabbi Majeski, can we ask a question?
Yep.
What does it mean that
when a tzaddik passes away, mitzvahs are
like applied to them.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it means, just like in this story, that it's possible for the tzaddik to come to this physical world and perform mitzvahs and have the benefits of observing mitzvahs in the physical world, just like during his lifetime. And not only that, he could be mitzi them. There's a famous another sefer, which again, I don't have the time to show you all the sources inside. I have it here in front of me. His name was the Chida. And he writes that there's a shul in Hebron. Some of you who went to Israel might have visited the shul. It's called Avram Avinu Shul. And the reason why they call it Avram Avinu Shul is because there was once an incident there. Years back, when there was very few people living there, it was Yom Kippur. They had no minyan. And it was close to Yom Kippur, and then a person who was traveling happened to come into the shul, and they were so excited. He was the 10th. And because of him, they had a minyan the whole Yom Kippur. After Yom Kippur is over, someone from the shul invited him to come to his house to break the fast. But on Yom Kippur, after we finished davening, we go outside to make the bracha on the new moon. So they all went outside, made the bracha on the new moon, they go back into the shul, and this 10th person is not there. They thought maybe something happened to him. Maybe from fasting, he was so weak, he fell and he fainted. They went searching for him, and they spent hours looking for him, but they could not find him. They had no choice. They had to go home, break the fast. That night, that person had a dream, and he came to him in his dream, and he said to him, I am this Rebbe Avram that I helped you with the minyan. Don't worry about me, I'm fine. And he said to him, you know who I am? I'm actually Avram Avinu. I'm a neighbor in this town, in the Maras HaMachpelah. And I saw how aggravated and pained you were that you had no minyan, so I came to complete the minyan. And the Chida says, I mean, it's very nice to come to do the minyan, but if he's not alive, then he can't make a minyan. So in other words, it was chas v'shalom, a deception. So we see clearly that Avraham Avinu was a different caliber of a tzaddik, that even if after his passing, he could be part of a minyan, just like a person who's physically alive. And Rabbi Majeski was able to make kiddush. I know I'm leaving you with a question because I want to make sure you come back tomorrow to get the answers. But we see from this, on one hand, he was buried, there was a burial, and that's according to Torah. It's not a figment of our imagination. On the other hand, he's considered alive to the extent that he was able to appear physically by the table. Halachically, he was able to make kiddush or be part of the minyan. So how do these two things come together, and what does it mean? So I guess that would be included in question number 7. Practically, what does it mean that he's alive? If we would say it means figurative, we can understand. But if we're saying that this means in a physical sense, how do we explain that? So Bli Neder will go into this tomorrow and hopefully be able to finish the page with the other questions as well. And if this class raised more questions, so be so kind, write it down, and tomorrow bring up the questions and we'll try to cover that as well. And if we have to, and you're willing, we probably can add a day and finish whatever we need to finish. Okay, Hatzlacha everybody.
Thank you.
To be continued tomorrow.
Thank you.